other institution to have access on to their data. This is the first step. Also, the second step is that we are trying to have with these digital signatures more and more fields covered, and in this way, if we have the electronic ID for the citizens, on the second moment we can have a lot of services able for the citizens. On this moment, is necessary for the institution to have IT related with all the national systems, and also with all these new projects what we have in implementation now, and in this moment in Romania, we put it mandatory for the investments in IT to ensure that the system is able to be integrated on the national IT. Actually, we're discussing about if you like it, like a big enterprise architecture. Yes, and we want that the Ministry of Communication to be kind of CEO of this architecture, and all the time to coordinate all the investments in the ICT, and to draw the way of the ICT system to be an integrated system in the end of the day.
One last question. Okay. We want to thank you, Mr. Yossi.
Thank you very much.
Okay, for the next keynote speech, we will have Mr. Jorge Silva. I welcome Mr. Jorge Silva. He is the Vice President of the Portuguese Notary Association.
Era lá de baixo.
Sorry. Good morning. I first offer my condolences to the Turkish people for the tragedy that occurred here. Second, I would like to thank the organization for this invitation that truly honored me. The chosen theme for this presentation is the contract dematerialization, the new paradigm. But what is a contract? A contract is an agreement between two or more persons acting both individually or in behalf of a company that stipulates a set of rights and obligations that binds them according to the juridical situation of a certain legislation. The first dematerialized contracts for transactions were used on low-priced goods as, for example, t-shirts, CDs, or computer games. But let's focus now on a more complex but quite frequent type of contract, a real estate transaction. On one side, a person wants to sell, on the other, someone wants to buy a certain good, a house, and an agreement that sets the price and other conditions, deadline to pay the agreed price, etc. Besides the owner and the buyer, in the countries that incorporated in their juridical system the Latin notary, as opposed to the common law system, among them 21 of the 27 Union European states, almost every country in South America, specifically Brazil, the state of Louisiana and state of Quebec in Canada, Mexico, several African countries, and recently China, in the agreement for the transaction of goods by own will or imposed by law. Besides the buyer, there is an intervention of a notary. A notary in the continental civil law is a jurist and a public official with delegated powers from the state. But now you can ask, why do we need a notary for? Why not just buy a house with our ID card and digital signature? The thought of buying a house while sitting down in our office is quite pleasant and technically possible with an ID card and a digital signature. But is this the right way? Let's imagine when we can buy a house and be granted a loan online. Now let's imagine that my wife just found out that I am having an affair with my secretary. And note that my wife was the person I trusted the most, and I gave her to my citizen card and the PIN code. My wife decides to get revenge for me with my citizen card and code, buys online a house for 1 million euros and asks for a loan of the same amount. Minding that the house is not worth 100,000 euros. How can I prove that it wasn't me that bought the house and asked for the loan? This simple example demonstrates that you can have a problem here. But let's add one more way of control. Besides the ID card and the PIN code, I have at home a fingerprint reader. At this point, I will tell you a true short story. A Russian investor rented a vault that could only be opened with a card, a PIN code, and his fingerprint. Few months later, family members of the investor complained to the authorities because he was missing, and as they knew about the vault, they went to the bank and were told that the vault was already empty. The poor Russian investor showed up months later with a finger missing. The purpose of this story is not to discourage the use of technology, quite the opposite, but to alert for the fact that if you want to convince people and companies to use this kind of tools, you shouldn't look at all the business as the same. Buying a house is not buying a book. They were both transaction contracts, but the concrete solutions for the dematerialization of these contracts must be different. To have success on dematerialization of juridical deals with high value, it is necessary to merge the most advanced technology with the traditional system of legal control by a notary or any other authority. Because for technological security to be effective must be followed by juridical security, and to this date no one has invented a system that completely replaced the human control. For better understanding of the intervention of a notary in juridical business, I will refer some our obligations: to verify the true identity of the contractors involved, to verify the quality of the contractors, for example, to confirm their powers as the company administrators, to verify if the contractors are explicitly acting according to their will, meaning that they understand the juridical effects of the contract they are signing. To verify the contractors are freely manifesting their will and not being coerced physically or psychologically. To verify if the contractors are not totally or partially incapacitated. To verify if both contractors are respecting applicable public laws. But let's go back to our transitional agreement. or two contractors have settled the price and agreed on the payment specifications. They want to finalize the contract, but unfortunately they are in two different places, separated by thousands of kilometers. And imagine they don't want to travel as they are too busy and they can't afford to waste time traveling or the weather conditions don't allow the trip. A solution for this problem could be that one of the contractors names a representative that is in the same area as the other contractor, or that is willing to travel the thousands of kilometers and face the bad weather to sign the contract. But what are the drawbacks? I will name only three for consideration purposes. One of the contractors had to nominate a procurator and trust that you would represent him the best possible way. The expenses of formalization of the contract would be higher because the honoraries of the procurator and the expenses of his traveling. The deferral of the formalization of a contract could imply additional costs and increase the chances of if non-realization. In regard to difficulties of this solution and considering the existing technological tools, let's focus on a different procedure with the following characteristics. The seller designated by contractor A and the buyer contractor B go simultaneously to a different notary in the area where they reside. Second, the contractors A and B declare in the presence of the notaries that they want to perform a real estate contract indicating the price and the other specifications of the contract. Third, the notaries verify all the mentioned elements and realize they are in agreement between the contractors and the contract can now be finalized. Four, both the seller and the buyer sign before their notary a document that contains a negotiated declaration according to the previously agreed draft between the contractors. Fifth, the notaries sign the contracts. Till this moment, according to this pressure, we have two unilateral manifestations of will on paper, signed one by the seller and the other by the buyer, before two different notaries. But to achieve the perfect contracts, you need to merge the declarations. How can you do it? The notaries of contracts A and B scan the documents, sign them with their qualified digital certificates, and then deposit them in a digital archive created by the national authorities with a single file number, and the effects of the contract start taking place at the moment of the deposit of the last document. In this archive may only enter digitally signed documents by the notaries. I think this process will be clear for all users, citizens and companies, and increase the levels of security of the process. In this sense, the digital signed documents are deposited in the digital archive managed by a suitable identity. Considering the traditional formula for the formalization of a transaction contract of real estate, we are not facing a total dematerialization of the contracts, but a partial one, because we still have the document on paper, signed first manually by the contractors and by the notary, and the dematerialization only occurs in the final moments of the pressure. But the next step should be the total dematerialization. This solution increases its utility if you consider contracts with more than two contractors and that everyone is different areas, and trying to find a place, a date and a schedule that is convenient for all the contractors might become a big obstacle to the conclusion of the deal, which won't happen if each one of them could choose the closest notary. The mass contractors, as are the banks, that usually appears as responsible for the necessary loans for the payment of the agreed price through credit, or that act as intermediate of the price liquidation, could largely use this system, adopting the following procedure. The bank would agree with the notary that would come to its headquarters. A single representative of the bank in the institution headquarters and before the notary present there would issue negotiable declarations and would intervene and sign contracts all over the country. The specific advantage for the banks would be absolute control of the performed financial operations, decrease of the possibilities of contracts signed by powerless representatives, decrease on the costs with human resources. This fusion between the traditional way of contracting with modern ways of contracting is, in my opinion, the right way, as opposed to radical solutions of total dematerialization. In this present moment, there are already some experience in Europe field concerning the realization of dematerialization contracts of real estate transaction, especially in France, where on the 28th of October of 2008 took place what is claimed by their authors as the first authentic electronic supported notary act. In the same country, we also have Teleact, an electronic system for information exchange and dispatch of documents between several entities, namely of transaction contracts to real estate property register. In Austria, since 1999, they have an archive system for digitally signed deeds. In Portugal, we have dematerialized system for the registration of companies, acts, and real estate contracts that can be viewed online. Unfortunately, up until our days, none of the mentioned systems present all the necessary features to be able to implement itself as the regular used solution by citizens and companies, because some only work as digital archive and others could never impose themselves, apparently due to the lack of promotion by the potential users, and also because the responsible people could quite explain the advantages of their use and also why the dematerialized contracting is safer than the traditional. The big obstacle to the dematerialization of the transaction contracts of real estate with or without mortgage is that the agents, either the state, technological companies or banks, sometimes look at this deal as one more, but for the majority of the citizens it's the deal of their life. And they are usually bound to a loan that can last for 30 or 40 years. In Portugal, the Chambers of Notaries is preparing a project that, when running, will allow the buyer, the seller, and the bank representative can be in different places, as previously explained, based on a digitally signed document and a safe digital archive, where only documents, notarial documents, can be archived. A solution that, without any question, will be well accepted by both citizens and companies, as it combines the traditional way of contracting with technological means that make easier the life of citizens and companies. This is the way they can benefit for all the dematerialization advantage without experience any of the disadvantages. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, this one.
Hello, I'm Natalia from Gemalto. Going back to your presentation, you mentioned the notary international with a lot of countries.
Yes.
And then I'm thinking about Portugal, Brazil, signing a contract. How about the mutual acceptance of the digital certificates? How is that going?
At this time, you can just do it inside the countries. In the European Union, you are negotiating international treaties that will allow it in the future to this between France and Portugal, Spain and Portugal, Germany and Portugal. This will be possible. With Brazil, we think in the future, if the countries agree, it's possible. It's very easy because we have will. I don't know if I answer your question. We don't have agree with the countries need to formalize and agree to be possible to do that, because at this time to sell or to buy real estate, we should do using certificate signature, you have to have a law that say that you can do the contract with a notary in Brazil and a notary in Portugal. You don't have this law at this time. In the European